Walkaway. St. John the Philosopher here. Growing up, my family was never really political. Certainly not in the way everything seems to be political today. We were patriotic. My dad was a very proud Marine, a veteran of the Korean War, in fact, and we were very religious. Dad came back from the war and became a preacher. So really, those things form the primary foundations of my belief system. I think the most political my dad ever got, in front of me anyway, was in his disdain for Bill Clinton. Now, as far as I could tell, Dad was a Democrat, but if there was one thing he couldn't stand, it was a liar.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
In any case, I don't remember any specific instances of being taught political dogma growing up, but I do know that I entered adulthood believing the standard line that Democrats were the good guys and Republicans were the bad guys. I didn't really know what either party stood for. I had no idea about their respective ideologies, but somewhere along the way, the battle lines had been drawn. The first and most impactful event, I guess what you would call my walkaway story, was 9/11. Like everyone else, I remember the day with vivid clarity. I was in college, living off campus in an apartment with a few other guys. I was doing a final edit of a paper that was due later that afternoon when I heard about the first plane. I wandered into the living room where one of my roommates was watching everything unfold on TV. The news had a camera on the one burning building, and the talking heads were droning on in the background as speculation-filled banners scrolled across the bottom of the screen. I asked what happened, and as my roommate was explaining the running theory that it was a private plane accident, I watched as the second airliner struck. At first, there was just disbelief. I watched for about a half hour, my brain not really registering exactly what was happening, and then they hit the Pentagon. If there was any doubt about what I was witnessing, it vanished right then. I rushed back to my room and called my family. Well, correction, I attempted to call my family. The phone system nationwide was jammed. And remember, this was back before ubiquitous smartphones and constant electronic communication. And my apartment's internet wasn't that far removed from dial-up. We were basically in a state of communications blackout. I feel like the whole country was at the time. So I went back to the living room, stood by the couch, and watched the first tower collapse. I watched the soot-covered faces. I watched the bodies fall. In the aftermath of that terrible event, as the details came out about who did it and why, as America geared up to meet this imminent threat with righteous indignation, leftists called for understanding, many going so far as to blame us for the tragedy. They were intent on sacrificing justice for false virtue. And once I became aware of this mode of operation, it was easy to identify, and I kept seeing it more and more. Leftists called Rush Limbaugh a racist, so I listened to his radio program for a while, looking for examples of it, and came up empty. Instead, I discovered a man who forwarded a political agenda contrary to theirs. It was his only sin. So the leftists sacrificed the truth in exchange for the false virtue of their political positions. Even today, as elected officials call for the disbanding of a law enforcement agency currently battling human traffickers and one of the worst gangs in North America, you see it. Sacrifice justice for false virtue. I'm no conspiracy theorist, so I don't believe there's some all-powerful controlling person or group dictating from on high, but I can clearly see how a critical mass of leftists can turn the cranks of society using any means necessary to push their agenda. Leftist majorities in education have indoctrinated our children to misunderstand history and despise America at its core, sacrificing national unity for the false virtue of cultural equivalence. Leftists in psychology have normalized mental disorders, sacrificing truth for the false virtue of acceptance. Leftists in sociology and advocacy groups have ironically stirred up divisions between all segments of society under the guise of diversity. Leftists in media have crafted the narrative of every story to paint half the country as evil bigots, and leftists in entertainment have convinced young people to trust them more than their own eyes. The information age has made it that much easier to see this pattern even more clearly, and even trace it all the way back to the days of slavery, when Democrats at the time sacrificed human liberty for the false virtue of racial purity. It's a different tune these days for sure, but they're playing the same broken instrument. They call themselves progressives, but what exactly are we progressing towards? Since 9/11/2001, I've been curating and refining my political ideology, not in light of the stances of the political parties of the day, but based on a biblical worldview, and sharpened by an understanding of historical, social, and economic reality. I believe in the essential freedom of the individual as ordained by God, that he designed the universe to operate according to laws, both physical and moral, and that trying to live outside those laws is a recipe for disaster. I believe in free speech and free association, even when it's uncomfortable, because uncomfortable truth is always better than convenient lies. I believe in free markets and the rule of law. I believe in equal opportunity over equal outcomes. I believe an armed society is a polite society, and that the government should always fear the people. And I believe America is, thus far, the greatest civilization in human history. I started on my political journey a long time ago, but as I watch the viciousness and depravity of the left reach new lows every day, I know walking away was the right decision. And you can be darn sure I'm going to keep on walking. Tell me what you think of this video. What do you think are essential American values? Do you have a walkaway story to share? Discuss in the comments. In the meantime, be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more videos on religion, culture, and politics. That's all for today. This is St. John the Philosopher. Goodbye, God bless, and I'll see you in another video.